This episode is the LAPD cover-up, or as I like to say, obstruction of justice. So Greg Kading's murder rap is obstruction of justice by the LAPD. His entire narrative is that the LAPD had no involvement. Other people are blamed. Blame it on the dead guys. Blame it all on Suge Knight. If you want proof of his morphing of lies, you can turn into my interview on Murder Master Mystery Show. Greg tells me that no LAPD officer ever worked for Death Row Records. Now, at the time, that seemed like a pretty safe bet because there wasn't much public information about police working for Death Row. But I'd spoken to Beverly Hills police that had encountered Rafael Perez, David Mack, Kevin Gaines, rolling with a Death Row Records crew and flashing their badges in the faces of the Beverly Hills police. Now, his lies were exposed back then, and they're really being exposed now. Look at the lies right now that are being exposed with Eugene Deal, and Eugene Deal thundered away last night at Greg Kading and at Reggie Wright Jr. And it's consistent with the obstruction of justice that the LAPD has orchestrated throughout the years in these cases. Now, Russell Poole told us that they wanted him to sign a gutted report. He turned in a 40-page report. They took out all of the salient details, handed him a 2-page or a 4-page report, wanted him to sign it, and he refused to do it. He refused to go along, to get along, and that's what caused him to be pushed out of the department. And he saw them handing that report to him as straight-up obstruction of justice. Now, we know that Stephen Katz hid stacks of files in his desk drawer, and the city of Los Angeles failed to hand these files over to the plaintiffs in the first Wallace civil trial. And it was that action that led to the mistrial in that case. The judge ordered that they go over and look. They had gotten an insider tip, and they went over and they looked in the desk drawer of Stephen Katz, and they found the files. And that's what led to the mistrial. And in the second Wallace civil trial, the city of Los Angeles kept saying that they would hand over information, but they never actually handed that information over. One of those reports, and there were many, many reports that were never handed over, but one of those reports was a 70-page report on the criminal activities of Reggie Wright Jr. They never handed that report over to the plaintiffs. So in 2006, Ya-May Christle sues the city of Los Angeles for retaliation over blowing a whistle on further obstruction of justice when her research into the Wallace civil trial was taken off of her computer desk. This information that she compiled was never given to the plaintiffs in the Wallace civil trial. And the complaint goes like this. August of 2005, Plaintiff Christle observed a note on a male officer's desk which read, "If you can get Ya-May's computer off her desk, I'll give you a week of free lunches." When the plaintiff reported the note to her supervisors, including a sergeant in the disciplinary settlement unit, they took no action. Based on information and belief, defendants have taken computers away from other officers in an attempt to conceal information, such as in the investigation concerning the estate of Christopher Wallace versus the city of Los Angeles, involving a conspiracy by LAPD officers to kill rap star Biggie Smalls, aka Notorious B.I.G., as well as in the $5 million verdict involving LAPD Rampart officers Liddy, Ortiz, and Harper. LAPD has developed a pattern and practice of concealing evidence that is self-incriminatory and also evidence that concerns the interests of defendant Burkow. Burkow is believed to be the mastermind of schemes within the LAPD to conceal and withhold evidence of corruption as well as witness tampering and criminal acts of wrongdoing. On or about July the 7th, 2005, the Federal District Court granted a mistrial in the case of Wallace versus the City of Los Angeles, case number CV022929FMC-RZX. The basis for the mistrial motion included the fact defendants withheld and concealed important evidence relating to the involvement of LAPD officers into the murder of Christopher Wallace, better known as the rap star Biggie Smalls, or Notorious B.I.G. It was also believed that at least one detective in the Robbery Homicide Division, Detective Katz, committed perjury when testifying about documents that were missing in that case. Based on information and belief in response to the mistrial motion, which also resulted in an award of $1.1 million in attorney's fees as sanctions against defendant City of Los Angeles, on or about the August the 4th, 2005, Police Administrator Gerald Shalif sent a notice to officers to provide information on the Wallace Biggie Smalls murder. Plaintiff is the person who was asked by Detective Casey to type this memorandum for Shalif that went to everyone in LAPD. The subject of the memorandum was request for all materials pertaining to the Christopher Wallace, aka Biggie Smalls, and Notorious B.I.G. homicide investigation. In the memorandum, everyone in the department was asked to immediately search their entire workspace for all documents and other materials, including tapes and photos, pertaining to the ongoing investigation of this homicide. The information was supposed to go to Detective Casey, Officer in Charge, Operation Transparency, PSB. After this memorandum was issued from Police Administrator Shalif, plaintiff input some of the information received from officers in response to the memorandum into the computer. The information received during just one day was more than 1 foot thick. Plaintiff was asked to type into the computer highlights of the information which contained materials including information about the alleged involvement by LAPD officers, a Compton gang member, and others into the murder of Mr. Wallace. This information went into a word matrix indexing the new discovery information pertaining to the Wallace investigation by LAPD. This occurred during approximately late summer 2005. The information matrix included computer runs, information where people were, and different witnesses to the murder of Wallace. In the Wallace case, defendant City of Los Angeles was under a continuing obligation to produce this discovery obtained through Mr. Shalif summer of 2005 based on information and belief. Defendant City of Los Angeles failed to comply with this court order from the federal court, and there is currently discovery underway in that federal action which may result in further sanctions or even default against the defendant City of Los Angeles for concealment of discovery. After compiling information on the Wallace case, plaintiff's computer was taken from her in approximately summer of 2005. It appears that information was purged, or at a minimum, reviewed from plaintiff's computer, since it included claims of some witnesses that LAPD police officers and others were involved in the killing of Mr. Wallace. which information was ordered by the federal court to be turned over to the Wallace family attorneys, and which was not so turned over. Thus, the motive and reason to conceal the information and purge Plaintiff Christle's computer is to protect defendant City of Los Angeles from having to turn over discovery materials in the Wallace case, in which there is a $360 million loss of earnings claim and other damages. Based on information and belief, information that was concealed in the Wallace case includes confessions by LAPD officers of conspiring to commit the murder of Mr. Wallace, and further internal affairs investigations in which 2 LAPD officers were charged with 17 counts of misconduct, including 4 counts involving the murder of Mr. Wallace and conspiracy to commit that murder. Based on information and belief, some of this concealed information was copied into plaintiff's computer and then purged from that computer by defendants when they took it from her and gave it to a Caucasian male officer they trusted. Based on information and belief, the investigation and recovery of documents is still ongoing at present in the Wallace case. Defendants keep finding more and more items at Robbery Homicide Division relevant to that case, but still do not produce those despite having a court order in the federal case to do so. Another motive for defendant to hide and conceal evidence is that the City of Los Angeles was ordered to pay $15 million in the case of Harper versus the City of Los Angeles after a jury learned of how the LAPD has hidden and concealed evidence and tried to frame officers. In retaliation for her whistleblower activities, reporting misconduct of police officers in connection with the murder of Christopher Wallace, and in retaliation for her reporting the misconduct. When I reached out to an LAPD officer that I know and asked her about Ya-May Christle, this officer said that Ya-May Christle was this officer's sergeant at Foothill, and that she's a super nice lady, and good for her that she stood up to Burkow, but she's also a good one that LAPD chased away.